everybody, thanks for coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for coming, everybody. My name's Dr. William Trebing. I am a chiropractor for 30 years and been here in Mount Pleasant for about 6. And I'm here to talk with you today about neurofeedback. We're going to maybe wait a couple more minutes and have a few more people come in. I'm actually waiting for a bottle of water too. So. But how many people have heard about neurofeedback?
Just vaguely, like not where I really know anything.
Okay.
Just heard the term.
And anybody visited a chiropractor before? Okay. So you know that we're about natural health. Okay. We're the natural health sector, really, of medicine, if you're going to call it. And our approach is taking care of things holistically first. In particular, my practice works in conjunction with people who are on medication. And the goal as well is if you have different problems with medication, is doing okay for, the goal of neurofeedback is to regulate the brain. I'll just explain what that means to you in a moment. Regulate the brain to the point where maybe you don't need as much medication. Okay. Not necessarily to take you off it, but sometimes it helps 50%, sometimes it helps 100%. And sometimes it doesn't help at all. Now, why is that? Because the brain is a very complicated organ. It is an organism, right? In and of itself. It has a lot of redundancy. I'm sure you've heard that we're only using about maybe 10% of our brain that we know of. And some people, maybe using even less than that, right? So if we say that 10 to 15% of the brain is everything that science knows about right now, that's probably a high estimate. Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Now I can get started. Okay, great. So that being the case, there's an awful lot of redundancy neurologically, okay? And the brain is fascinating, and the brain is like a fingerprint. Everybody's is different. So what we know about the brain, okay, what I'm going to teach you today about the basics of what we know, is still the basics, right? It doesn't mean that it applies to everybody. Absolutely not. So neurofeedback is predicated on anecdotal results, okay, for that particular reason. Now, there's a lot of research to support neurofeedback and how it works, and it's all on my website. I'll give you that later on. You can read that. If you're research-minded, science-minded, there's plenty of research over the last 150 years, especially, okay, to back up how neurofeedback works. There's plenty of books written by neurologists, and the founder of this work were 3 neurologists, and Dr. Rick Suter, actually, if you want to look him up, S-O-U-T-E-R, is a brilliant psychologist who made up the actual program that we use, which is called brain core neurofeedback, right? Brain core therapy. And within that realm, okay, everybody came together to say, okay, we have tech people with this particular neurofeedback franchise, and we have neurological people. How can we make a program that best suits the patient? And there are about, what I know, about 15 different neurofeedback franchises out there. Now, why is there so many neurofeedback franchises? Here in Mount Pleasant, you have a lot of different companies and a lot of different places advertising it. Well, neurofeedback is not done in the same way, okay? In different franchises, different creators will pick a new, like any other market, will pick a new creative way to do things, right? Ours happens to involve fluctuating lights on a television screen, fluctuating sound in order to complete the neurofeedback. And I'll explain to you how that works in a little bit more, right? But there are many different franchises out there. And again, for research purposes and for looking up the different things, the papers online, just go to my website, which is Mount Pleasant Neurofeedback or Brain Core Therapy, okay? So we're talking about dysregulation. Now, what does that mean? Well, if we're talking about dysregulation, there's got to be a standard of regulation, right? So what's regulation? Well, there are different nerve cells in the brain. Okay? So they produce different responses neurologically, and they also produce different byproducts, different neurotransmitters, different hormones. There's so much going on because the nervous system is directly involved with the endocrine system, with the hormonal system. All right? So to break it down, basically, you've got fast waves, or you've got fast neurons, and this is very basic, and you have slow. And all of neurofeedback, the main function is to balance these two out. All right? Now, under the fast, you have neurons that produce, and when I say waves, what are we talking about? You don't have these waves floating around your head. Waves are just a way that we can see this on an oscilloscope, so we can know what nerve is firing, right? So right now, you guys are in beta. Thank God you're in beta. All right? And there are 4 types of different beta waves. We're going to go over those in a moment. But beta is your concentration wave, right? Beta gets stimulated when you're drinking that coffee or matcha tea. Anything with caffeine is going to stimulate your beta, all right? Beta produces a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine or acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, if you have too much beta, breaks down into what? I just know you know. All right. Well, if you have too much beta activity, what's the reason you get tired when you have too much beta activity? Too much thought. Okay, too much caffeine, too many amphetamines, too much Adderall, too much speed if you're doing it. Okay. Okay. Well, what you get tired from the cortisol. Too much of this, you're going to be achy, painy, and agey. It's going to age you. Okay? So acetylcholine, ACH, from beta activity will break down into cortisol. This is why you need to sleep. This is why when you have the caffeine rush, you're like, bing, or I just had some coffee over at Starbucks. I'm all ready for your lecture. Okay, so I'm all perked up. So I've got a lot of beta activity happening, producing a lot of cortisols. Later on, I'm going to need a nap. Now, why is that? Because you build up more cortisols with beta activity, you need to rest afterwards. If you don't have the slow wave activity, which is in between is alpha, all right? And then you have theta and you have delta neurons over here. These are what put you to sleep and what relax you and regenerate the nervous system. You don't regenerate the nervous system deteriorates. Okay, so the nervous system needs rest. This is why sleep is so important. During sleep, you've got the theta and the delta activity going on. Alpha, this is chilling out, having a glass of wine. All right? Watching TV, just relaxing. Meditation is your alpha state. Alpha is really between the two. And this is a basic overview of it all. So this is really how your brain works with these different neurons vacillating back and forth. Now, I will teach you what medication does. Let's just go through it. How does the brain get, okay, so first of all, regulation is the key. You want a healthy balance between all of these. If you don't have a balance, what we found out in neurofeedback is that a whole slew of issues can happen. Attentional issues, mood issues, anxiety, depression, all of the memory, all of these are the common things that we treat. Do we treat these things? Not particularly, not per se. The only thing neurofeedback does is balance the dysregulation in the brain. So there's either regulation or there's dysregulation, right? And how do we know that what we're doing works? Because of the results that we get. Our practice is results driven, all right? People get results or they're not getting results with medication. They get results where they haven't got results anywhere else. And they think it's fascinating. And this is what really makes it fun, for us anyway. Now, I have a couple of practices doing this. I have another one in Greenwich, Connecticut. My wife and I run that one. She's a clinical psychologist. Bree and I run this one down here. The entire aspect of it is to get people results as fast as possible. And sooner or later, you're going to get it. If you don't get results with neurofeedback, well, then there's another issue going on, and we analyze that as well. And it's all done with the brain map, which is a QEEG. Have you heard of a QEEG brain map? Okay, so the QEEG is what they do in the hospitals if you have seizures, if you have stroke. They're going to look at the electrical activity of the brain. We do the exact same thing in our office. Okay? What we're doing is this is an electronic picture of the brain. We put a cap on your head, we fill it up with gel, all right? And the computer analyzes the amount of beta, alpha, beta, data, delta that you have. So we aim towards regulation. These are the different things that can dysregulate the brain that you have up there. Let's go over how this magnificent organism works. You know, there's another, I'm a pretty spiritual guy. There's another brain wave that is noted that goes faster, okay, than beta. It's called gamma. We don't talk too much about gamma in neurofeedback circles because gamma is the spiritual, it's the God wave. It is the pulsation that is within each and every one of your cells. It's almost like the electricity of life. Right? It's not only in the brain, it's like everywhere. And when you measure, scientists have been trying to measure gamma for decades, and it does its own thing. It's elusive, all right? It's like the double slit experiment, if you've ever heard of that in quantum physics, all right? The electrons are going to go exactly where the analyzer thinks that they're going to go, okay? The observer is paramount, okay? They found that whatever the scientists in that particular experiment observed, what the outcome that they thought would happen, happened. And then when they changed their observation, that happened. This is all in the realm of electrons and gamma, and this is like another presence. Some people say your soul is in here. Okay, so electrically, what are we doing when we're analyzing neurofeedback, when we're analyzing the brain? We're trying to figure out our origins. Okay, because we're not just this meat suit walking around. You know, we're so much more than that. And we just want to know, we're explorers. We want to know, what is the basis of life? Electrically, we have found that it is somehow expressed this way, all right? But who knows what we'll find later on. So the brain is a magnificent organism, and it's fascinating to study. So you've heard about left brain and right brain people? That is because the left brain has primarily thinking activity, so that's going to be what wave? What neuron? Let's see who has the delta activity or the beta activity going on. Left hemisphere is going to be primarily beta activity, right? It's not the same in every person. Sometimes people are switched. What that means is that your left hemisphere is the creative hemisphere, okay? And that's primarily with left-handed people. It happens about 10, 15% of the time. But for the most part, us left brain folks focusing in beta activity should be happening in the left hemisphere. That means that in the right hemisphere is your creative side, right? You've heard of right brain and left brain. So less beta activity, more alpha activity you need for it to process creativity. Now, these are the poets, right? The songwriters, the writers in general. They're going to be focused mainly in that hemisphere, okay? And you need the good balance of the both in order to live functionally, right? Now, there are two things neurofeedback does. The first thing it does is balance out the fast and the slow waves. The second thing it does is there is a spillover that happens when you have too much beta activity on the right, because that's your thinking brain, and you have too much slow wave activity on the left, right? And if you have a child that has ADHD, this is the most common thing we treat in our offices. Too much slow wave activity in the left hemisphere. And we have to get that balanced out. Whereas this is more beta, this is more alpha. Because a lot of ADHD is not necessarily hyperactivity. It's your kid just trying to wake himself up. All right? Because too much slow wave activity in the left hemisphere. I'll give you some examples of that and then answer some questions. So we said gamma are very fast waves. We've talked about that. There's a very good book called The God Particle, which talks about this. Let's getting into it a little bit. Then we have the beta, which we just talked about. So beta goes in several different ways. And the goal of all neurofeedback care, you see where it says low beta SMR? You want to get people in that state because low beta is the mix between alpha and beta. It's that calm processing, being able to do my work kind of state. Whereas you're not hyped up and over anxious, you're not caffeine down, you're not Adderall or Ritalin down, okay, functioning at a very high level, and you're gonna crash later. You've got the mix of two. SMR is in between here. And neurofeedback research, from all companies, has determined that this is the state to achieve. There is mid-range beta and high beta. This is high stress, but very high focus. You're going to create a lot of cortisols there. Okay? Means you're going to crash later. Mid-range beta is where we're all in right now. Okay? So low beta, again, this is the SMR. This is the goal of all care. I want to put this up here because, a lot of people come to our offices and they want to know, well, can I stay on medication? That's up to you and your medical doctor. I don't do medication. Right? But when we go through the process, if you feel like talking with your doctor about getting off your medication because you're doing better, that's something we encourage, right? That's between the medical world, not between us. But these different medications, Adderall, Vivance, Dexedrine, what they do is they hyperinflate. It's like 10 cups of coffee. They hyperinflate the beta. They get the concentration happening. Okay, but then what else does it do? It produces an awful lot of cortisols, and so you're going to get more side effects from that. And the reason people like neurofeedback is because it can create the exact same balance without medication, without side effects. You see, because it's holistic, and that's the draw. That's the appeal. One of the appeals. Also, we're actually doing things to correct the brain. The research shows that and it's on average, the results from neurofeedback processes, if they're working for you, can last up to 25 years. You see? So is it a fix-all for everything? No, but it could be a fix-all for somebody you know and love. So again, this is just looking at what these amphetamines do, is they decrease the slow wave activity, okay? And they try to get you in beta in the 12 to 26 range, which is mid-range beta to high beta. It's not SMR. And, after a while, the nervous system is going to break down on that. And if you know anybody who's been on these different medications, you'll witness that. There are different side effects that happen. Caffeine, okay, I mentioned, kind of does a similar response. It increases beta and decreases the slow waves, right? So we're doing the same thing. In order to wake up, so you can make that drive if you're tired, we're doing that. But there is a drawback to it. You're making a deal with the devil, right? Because eventually you're going to crash. So the brain, first of all, okay, so with everything I just thrown at you now, do we have any questions? Just with the basics of how the brain operates. No? Okay, you might have them later. All right. So a healthy brain has a mixture of everything going on, but what we treat within our offices is an imbalance, and that's either going to be slow processing, idle processing, or fast processing. All right, now the idle processing, the brain waves consistently higher magnitudes of delta and theta waves. That's slow processing. We've got a healthy relationship between slow and fast. This is the very first thing I said. The balance should be 3 slow waves to every 1 fast wave. Then you go throughout your day and you're not really tired until you eat. If you have that 3-to-1 ratio. Most ADHD kids that I see in my office have anywhere from 6 to 8 to 1. All right, that's an increase of slow wave activity in the left hemisphere. Very simple thing to correct. And when we start correcting it, miracles happen. Right, so we do treat this slow processing brain primarily for a lot of things. I'm going to show you some examples of that on the brainwave after this. Idle processing is when you have too much alpha. Right, that's the mid-range. That's throwing everything out of balance. And I'll show you what the symptoms of these different things can be. Here we go. Fast processing. Okay, fast processing. Well, from everything I've told you right now, you know that that's obviously beta. Right, we have too much beta activity going on. Right? And we have a lot of cortisols being produced. Now, one would think that if you have a lot of beta activity, fast processing, that these things would be obvious, right? Let's zoom in on this a little bit more. Can you all see that? All right. And the lower one down here. Obviously, if we're going to have too much fast processing, things like anxiety, OCD, migraine, panic attacks, yeah, that does happen. That does happen with fast processing brain. The thing is, these symptoms can show up with slow processing as well. This is just the average, all right? Once again, every brain is like a fingerprint, okay? So a fast processing, you're going to get what you would think, the more restless kind of individual, the more anxiety, the more worry, the more panicky, and that needs to be calmed down a bit. Now, slow processing, you would think, creates these types of problems, right? And again, with the slow processing, we have that ADHD because the kid's always trying to wake himself up, or the adult, we have that as well. Somebody with idle processing or slow processing, you ever meet somebody that just can't stop talking? A friend, family member, maybe even a kid, right? You get them going and it just is like, oh, okay, how long are we gonna be here, right? That's either idle or slow processing, okay? It's really excessive speech. And the reason they're doing that is because they can't get the thoughts organized enough to form just a coherent stream of, okay, now we should hear what you have to say. That doesn't enter into place. So these are the general issues that we treat with the slow processing. Let me give you some examples, all right? So every time you come into one of our offices, you're going to get a scan. And this is just what it looks like, okay? I told you we analyzed the 4 different neurons in the brain. Here's the delta, the theta, the alpha, and the beta. And you can see the scale on the side there, with yellow being very high and then the purple being, very low, parases. So this particular patient, 64-year-old male, memory problems, speech problems, all right, he had a stroke in the back of the head. Look at the beta and look at the blue. The stroke was right back here, and this is what we found. This very deep blue, which is very low beta. All right. He also had an issue with, you can see the yellow, the very high, with the delta. Whenever you have a brain injury, you're going to see a lot of delta activity, a lot of theta activity. Concussions that we see, a stroke. Anybody have an idea of why you might have a lot of slow wave if you have a brain injury? What's that?
I was thinking that part of the brain, when you have like a stroke, the blood doesn't stop going there, so it kind of like dies some of the cells there. So try.
That's part of it, but what's the brain trying to do if you have an injury? Trying to heal,
Yeah.
and so what does this do? What do the slow waves do? They put you to sleep. They want you to rest, all right? You're going to have an awful lot of slow wave activity in brain injury. That in and of itself creates ADHD. So we have an awful lot of that there. He was under care for a number of years, and with this, got his memory back up to about 80%, had tremendous success. Didn't see him for a little bit of time. Focusing in on here, you see that the injury site has very low beta there. Right. And then over here, I just wanted you to see that's an example of the, this ratio is probably about 10 to 1 here.
I've got a quick, if you have
Yeah.
a lot of beta, are you gonna sleep more? I mean, are you gonna be somebody that's constantly tired and sleeping a lot?
No, if it's excess beta, you're probably just going to be really anxious if you can't get that balance. Yeah. It could also show up as attentional issues, panic attacks, heart palpitations, that type of thing. All things that are related with overexcitability if you can't get the beta calmed down. But it's generally balanced out with a delta that's raging over as well. The body does this. When you have an injury especially, it's going to increase your delta. All right, so he's 4 years later, he came back because he realized that he wants to have some tweaks. You can see on the new scan, I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, so the injury site getting a little bit more active, but it's not as active as it was before, all right, with the beta activity. And look at the delta activity. The delta has more normalized down to, again, I haven't seen it for a number of years, but we don't have that same high delta activity, which means that the brain is healed within this. Some more examples. This is anxiety, ADHD in a 57-year-old woman, all right? And to your question, look at the beta over there. Very, very high. That indicates yellow, all right? Her main thing is anxiety and just obsessive thoughts, OCD, not being able to focus, right? When we balance this out for her, we definitely helped her. ADHD, impulsivity, I wanted to give you a little bit of a broader range here. And a 7-year-old little boy, we just started treating. Well, this is a perfect example. If you look at the beta over in the corner over there, all right, we have high beta in certain areas, but take a look at that delta activity, right? This little boy's constantly trying to wake himself up. And this is why he, in his classroom, he gets up and walks out of the classroom. He's just done. Like, all right, I'm gone. So he stopped doing that since he's able to tend to concentrate a little bit better since we've had him on treatment. Here, anxiety, heart palpitations, ADHD, 31-year-old woman, okay? Same type of thing. There is no cookie cutter when you're analyzing these different waves, when you're analyzing the way that the brain is functioning according to acute EEG, all right? There are just averages, and we can talk about the science of this all day long, but the only thing that matters is if you're going to get a result when you put this. That's all that matters. That your kid and your family is functioning better, as a result of that. And again, the brain is a very complicated organism. ADHD, stutter, and a 15-year-old male that we have right here in South Carolina, all right? Same type of issues, just a lot of 6 to 8 around there with the slow waves going to the fast waves. Again, a lot of delta activity there. You see the beta is fairly normal, right? No real issues there with the concentration, just being really overpowered by the delta, by the slow waves. And this is a typical thing of what we find. So again, we have an overpowering of the slow waves here, depression, rumination, sleep issues, 21-year-old male. Same type of thing. And this is how we analyze everybody that comes in. Now, again, ADHD, anxiety in a 44-year-old man. Take a look at that beta activity, right? I mean, this is an awful lot of stress in there. And not so much, he's with the delta or the slow waves. But, sometimes the beta waves, the activity just needs to be balanced out. All right, so again, the goal to care, whenever we do our treatments, we have a line for beta on the oscilloscope. We have a line for alpha, delta, theta, okay? And what we wind up seeing when care is commencing is one solid line, okay? Meaning that things are coming together in balance. It's all about balance. How about questions now? Very quiet group, yes.
How are you actually, what are the treatments that you were doing?
The treatment in brain core, all right, and this is all my information. If you're sending anybody in for a brain map, we're taking $125 off. If you say you've been here, you just have to contact me. The best way is to just text here or call here. That's central scheduling, and you'll get somebody to just say that you've been to the lecture. And we'll offer that for a couple of months if you say you've been here. How do we do it? There are 2 types of neurofeedback. There's active and there's passive. Ours is a passive system. I searched around. I've been in practice 38 years, doing a number of different things in the chiropractic profession. I searched probably for about 5 or 6 years for the best neurofeedback program, the one that I thought produced the fastest results, right? Shortest period of time and at the best cost, for people. So I chose brain core therapy, and what we do here is basically you're just sitting and watching something on Netflix. And it's passive because you're relaxing, but at the same time, the screen is definitely doing a whole bunch of wonky things. You're noticing that the lights are going all over the place, the sound is going up and down in your headphones. And we're using, first of all, it's part of the process of throwing the brain out uses electrons. You can throw the brain out from computer, from phone use. You know, how many kids have their faces in their phones and their iPads, right? That blue light coming in does something, right? That's only part of what throws the brain out. Stress primarily does it. But this particular system uses those same electrons to create regulation. So it reverses the process. All right. There are neurofeedback systems that play games. You've probably heard of that. And the problem with that is that once your kid or the adult, you get tired of the games, so your brain stops working with it. The great thing about Brain Core is that you can be sitting and you have a diverse level of media. Everybody wants to know what happens next in the show. So you're not really focused on the neurofeedback, see? But you're actively engaged. And that's why this system has the results that it has. Now, the national average according to Dr. Suter, of success in neurofeedback offices is about 46%. Okay, 46%. Brain Core, you're already up to about 70%. We're on the high end, and that's why I decided to do it. And our offices are up around 75, 80% with success. Why is that? Because number one, if I feel after the scan that I can't help you, I let you know. So I have very few failures coming in, for the program. Does it mean you're going to get 100% success? No, sometimes you have to have success with other things too. Sometimes it's a mixture of medication and the neurofeedback. You continue on with that, we balance it. But I would say for the most part, the results are pretty astounding and people are really happy.
How long is the treatment?
Okay, the treatment, good question, goes for 30 to 36 visits over about 3 or 4 months. Right, the way we do it. Now my son also does this work, he's in DC, and he sells the home units, the very same program. You can do it at home. Right? I don't choose to do it that way because it's a little more expensive, number one. Number two, the way we do it in the traditional neurofeedback sense, having people come to the office, sitting down, having the visit, talking with them about what's going on. We're a very personalized office. I'm a very family-oriented guy, and if we have a family-oriented practice, okay, we like to be able to sit there, answer your questions. The home units are okay, but you're doing it all yourself. You got to read how to hook it up. You got to, and I think that cuts down results, and it does, all right, because the home units don't get the same results that we do. So that's why I don't do the home units. A lot of other neurofeedback franchises, everybody gets the same thing. Right, so no matter what you do, you come in, you get the exact same thing. Right, Brain Core is geared towards the QEEG. Everybody gets an individualized protocol from me because I'm analyzing it and study it, and I follow you. Even though the girls might be in the office doing the tech work, I see everything throughout the day. I see every single screen of every single person that comes in, and I'm always constantly analyzing through each day about how we're going to switch protocols, how we're doing. I do all the communication. I mean, quite a bit of it to change protocols, and it depends on what I'm seeing on the screen and also how the person is feeling. What kind of results we're getting. Now, yeah, so 30 to 36 visits. Cost, right? Have you heard of Dr. Amen in Manhattan? He's one of the neurofeedback, gurus, right? And you go to see him for a QEEG. You're up around $2,500 for that, and the report to $3,000 just for the report, right? That's half the cost of our care for 4 months. But he's Dr. A, right? He's been doing this a long time. This report is good. Our report is shorter, and it cuts right to the chase. Neurofeedback programs can go anywhere from 8 to 15,000, depending on where you go. Where I am in Greenwich, Connecticut, there is another organization. We're in Greenwich, they're in Westport, a little bit further. The programs are within the $8,000 to $12,000 range. By the time you get finished paying for hours over time, it's going to cost you from 4 to 5. Right? A lot of neurofeedback places will charge you case fees. We don't do that. We charge weekly. Right? So my whole thing is that if you're not getting results, we're not going to keep seeing you. You need to be doing something else, right? So that's why we don't charge cases. Again.
I think you have a question online.
Oh, can I just keep going with this?
Yeah.
Hold up. Again, if you're not getting results, we're not going to keep you coming if I don't think that it's working. Most people on this 36 visit program see results within the first 8 to 12 visits. You start seeing something positive happening. I'm sorry you missed us.
Come on in. A big entrance.
Never too late. to
Somewhere
be
around
ready.
visit 8 to
Come
12,
on in.
you start really seeing there's a change happening here. And what I say to my parents is like, just keep observing your child, keep watching. Or if you're an adult coming in, just stay aware of how things are different. Be conscious of it. And, parents after around 6, 7, 8 visits, wow, he actually had a conversation with me. He actually looked me in the eyes. Sometimes it starts as something subtle and then it just progresses on, in that way. Okay, so we have a question online first, yes.
Yes. What is involved with the brain scan itself? I think I heard you mention Dr. Amen. I know I had called his office years ago and they wanted to put my son to sleep because he had to sit still for so long for the brain scan. What is the difference in your office? Is that the case?
No, we don't put anybody to sleep. Sometimes I talk too long. But, what's involved is that my techs or I are trained to, we do a brain map cap. And we put a cap on top of the head. We fill it with different points with gel so your hair gets all messed up. And you just have to sit quietly for, about a half an hour.
And you can move slightly or?
You can move slightly, but we prefer people big. Any kind of movement that you have is going to create, any kind of muscle activity and neurofeedback is going to create what's called an artifact. Okay?
Yeah.
You're not going to get accurate results. The good thing is that we incorporate that in there. So if you do have some moments, all I really need is 15, 20 seconds of a clear screen. All right. Okay. We do every site for a minute and a half. So we're ensured to get that. The computer then analyzes everything. We cannot, if you have a child that is just too fidgety and cannot sit still for the brain map, this happens frequently. Mm-hmm. We do have protocols that I can start with because I already more or less know what's happening with that. It's probably a lot of beta is dysregulation.
Right.
We start right in with treatment at that point, and then we do a brain map later.
Okay.
That quite frequently happens. A lot, like with the 7-year-old boy we had, what I showed before. Quite often, if you come in, we have the parents sit and encourage the child to stay still. It's the hardest visit for them because they have to have this cap on their head and they really have to be quiet, for 15 minutes with their eyes open. And then the hardest part is 15 minutes with their eyes closed. And we take breaks, it's like a minute and a half segments. And we say, okay, you're doing good, and usually with that 80% of the time we can
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions regarding that?
Sort of just following up on that.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to sit still for a solid 30 minutes. You said you do
Right.
have
It's
breaks.
a total of 30 minutes. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So let's be clear on that. You're sitting, when you're watching, when your brain is being scanned, you have your eyes forward, and you can blink and just relax. You're looking at one thing on the screen, and then we do that in 1.5 minute intervals.
So they're looking at something.
They're looking at something, and then
Okay.
after a minute and a half, we have to analyze each and every part of the brain, all right? We have to move through it and see where the regulation, dysregulation is. And that takes a minute and a half, making sure that we don't have too many artifacts, right? And then we get an accurate report. And so after that minute and a half, we say, oh, great, good, you're done. Take a breath, move around, you can stand up, you can do that. Sit back down again, let's do the next minute and a half. And if you're really quiet, and adults breeze right through this, we can get it done in 25 minutes, 25 minutes. Kids sometimes take 45 minutes, depending on what they need to process through. It's very difficult for them to sit still through this process. But after that, guess what? They're coming in, they're watching TV. The treatment involves 2 leads on the head and ear clips. And that's it. You don't have to put the cap on anymore. Yes?
So the TV show they're watching, is it something that they pick out or it's like a set program?
Another great question. You've got to pick out something non-violent, something that's non-stressful, okay? I had a guy with anxiety and anger management issues watching Narcos. Okay? We stopped that right away. All right. The neurofeedback was still working. But it really started working when we started watching, Seinfeld or something like that, something that's going to naturally stimulate more endorphins rather than, more stress hormones, in the body. So we ask every parent, pick out something that's a series, something that they could something maybe that they only watch when they're here. It's a half an hour each time. They look forward to coming and watching it. And something fun, something entertaining, something educational. I have a couple of Japanese kids coming in there that love watching the Nature Channel. Yeah, they love, it's just, there's another Gaia program on planet Earth. Some people love watching that. You can't watch anything on YouTube, no gaming things, I prefer, it's gotta be something with a good amount of movement, not necessarily any documentaries, not lectures, but something engaging, okay? Because especially if your child is not engaged and they start getting bored, you have to be engaged for this program to work. And generally, 90% of the kids that are coming in, they get a break to watch television for half an hour in the doctor's office. It's a cool thing. Yes, who else? Okay. Well, if you want to try it out, you have a means to do it. You can contact us here. Take a picture of that. Also, I can put my email up here if you want that. If you just go to Dr. William Trebing at Yahoo. You can ask me personal questions, and it's all confidential, and I can answer them for you before you come in. But the discount will hold for a while. Any questions on care? Any questions? I know you came in late.
Another question.
Yeah, it's almost like when you come to the office, I'm going to give you the lecture anyway. But this lecture is pertaining to your family. I explain the entire thing, to you. But the problem with me, with my patients, is I don't talk too little. I talk too much. Right? So we're really oriented, family-oriented in care, really wanting to get you the results that you're coming for. All right, so it's not like I'm not going to be saying this again to you. So whenever you give us a call, we'll explain everything to you again. Yes.
So after you come in from this 30 minutes, do you have to continue on? Is it the segments, like you do the 30 sessions?
That's a really good
And then you
question.
come back again, like
Yeah.
maybe 6 months later, or is this like a continuation of care? Like
Well,
what
it's
is-
30 to 36 visits, and that really depends on the brain. A lot of people at that point have already regulated, they're feeling great, and we're anchoring in the results. Again, national average is 20 to 25 to 30 years holding it. Most of the time, people get their results and they're like, all right, see ya, I never see him again. From there. I do have people, like the first fellow that I showed you with the stroke, like he was coming in once a week, I didn't see him for a couple of years, now he's coming back for some refreshers. It all really depends on what the injury is, what the problem is. Obviously, he's still working on that stroke, right? And so we're getting some results with it, and stroke care and that type of thing is complicated. So the brain is like a fingerprint, it's very different. So you might find, and also we have some autistic kids coming in. Now, I can't work with all levels of autism. It doesn't work with the higher levels. If you're higher functioning, moderately to higher functioning autism, higher, yes, definitely we can do a lot with that. When we start going a little lower than that to the moderate end, a lot of those I can't treat. But if you have that type of situation happening, you're probably going to need more visits, and you're probably going to want to come for a little bit longer. But I've had a high functioning autistic kids that were in special classes in 8th and 9th grade, and now they're in college, driving, having girlfriends. I mean, it's really helped them come out of it, with that. And a number of my college kids with the higher functioning autism, they come back when they're back and they just want to have a tweak and that type of thing. And sometimes I just don't see it. I mean, listen, life goes on, you get older and they just start getting on with their lives, and this is what you want. You want normal functioning life, right? You don't want to be held back by these things. You want an answer, and this could be an answer. That's why we love providing it, because of the results. Hope that answers your question. I always take the long way on the question. Yes, did you have one?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was just smiling.
All right, well, listen, again, you'll get the discount if you're coming. Email me for that. Somebody will, if you don't have any other questions, I really appreciate you coming. It's been lovely spending time with you tonight. And people online, how many people do we have online?
6.
Great. Nicest, I don't know where the camera is.
It's right here.
Oh, hi. Okay. Nice to be spending time with you as well. And you can feel free to ask me any other questions by email or contact us through the website or, through the phone. Just texting us or giving us a call.